watching Twin Tier Sunday with Jennifer Sheahen.
Welcome to Twin Tier Sunday. I'm your host, Jennifer Sheahen. This mound right here, it used to be the dream of a young boy to stand on it every single night. And he had some obstacles to overcome, but that he did, becoming a professional baseball player, and now giving the opportunity to young kids to achieve their dreams as well. Today, we talk about Dave Clark.
What scares me is that I might have become the kind of person who doesn't take chances, who doesn't push the envelope, who doesn't ignore the odds. I might have become a different person altogether.
Dave was a young man with big dreams. Diagnosed with polio at a young age, he struggled with a physical disability. But his mental strength and passion for baseball carried him to the top. In 1971, he signed a pro contract with the Pittsburgh Pirates organization and played all over the globe. Till this day, he is involved with this nation's pastime. The Dave Clark Foundation is a nonprofit organization encouraging those with a disability to dream and do.
Good job!
Letting these dreamers play on professional baseball fields with big-time players like the Binghamton Mets.
Yeah, they just, they just got big smiles on their face, and I guess that's the biggest thing, is just coming out and having fun, and just running around a little bit, and it's great to see a smile on their face. So.
This weekend, Corning native and GCL Marlins player Zach Sullivan had a chance to share his skills.
They're the happiest kids on earth. I mean, they get to do what we get to do. I mean, they get that kind of excitement, and just like we get to play when we go out there.
It's okay to be scared, nervous, and uptight before a game or competition of any kind. But don't ever let fear hold you back. Let it motivate you. Let it spur you on. Let it drive you to perform at your highest level.
All right, Dave, thank you so much for joining us. This is our third attempt at the interview. It's getting stormy outside here, so let's get it right this time.
Perseverance.
That's right, perseverance.
Yep.
Dave, go ahead and tell me. Your slogan is dream it and do it. Blueprint in life. We're getting blown away by the storm here. We're hoping that we can get through this interview and do it. How did you come up with that slogan, and how did it stick with you throughout your life?
Well, again, I think before grade school, I wasn't made to feel any different by my brothers or anybody that I grew up with. Once in grade school, kids are kids, and I was bullied and picked on, and I think my philosophy was kind of forged then, because in my opinion there's two types of dreamers that just dream, and then dreamers that dream and do something about their dream and work hard and are willing to put the work in. And that's where, and I knew for me to be accepted by my peers that I had to show them that I could do things that they could do even though I had limitations. Yeah. And so it made me even work harder to gain that acceptance and to turn their opinions around of my limitations.
Definitely. Now, I think also, too, a lot of these kids that participate in your foundation, when they come here, they kind of question their limitations. And and maybe I'm bringing back the rope story that you had in gym class. It was you're ready to go, you see the rope hanging, and all the other kids were kind of struggling to get to the top. But when you attempted to do it, something that you didn't expect happened. Why don't you explain that experience and how you kind of felt after that?
Well, first of all, I didn't think I could make it either. I looked at the top of that rope and I said, there's no way, when it was my turn to go up. And I took, again, another one of my philosophies, just take little steps at a time toward your end goal. Because if you try to accomplish too much toward a goal, you're going to get frustrated and you're not going to reach it. So just little steps that will get more confidence built in you toward your goal. And so what I did is I just grabbed the rope and put one hand over the other very slowly, and lo and behold, by the end of the time, I was at the beam at the top, and I was the only kid in the class to do that. Now, when I came down, I couldn't use my feet to make that little S shape to slow you down because I didn't have any use of my legs. So I was sliding slowly with my hands and burning them on the rope. So when I got down to the bottom, my hands were singed. They were burned from the rope, but it was the best burn feeling in the world. It was just great because all the kids in the class, their mouth was And all of a sudden, I became one of them. And it just, it forged an attitude of mine that until you try to do something, you don't know whether you can do it or not, even from within. Because I didn't think I could do that. But it proved to me that you can do something if you put your mind to it and you try to do it.
That's right, and it helps having that support too. And it's been talked about a lot today about this little red wagon. And you know, it was one of the things though in your book when I was reading it, I highlighted it right away, and I asked him, I was like, he never saw this man again. This is horrible. Tell me about this little red wagon, your first field trip, and then a surprise years, 50 years later, okay?
Yeah, it's a teacher in first grade announced a walking field trip to the local fire station. And so at this point, you know, I'm definitely walking slower than my classmates with the crutches and braces, and I didn't want to do it because I didn't want to be the focus of holding this class up on the walk. That would really be embarrassing to me at that point. So and she announced it like 2 weeks before the actual day. So I had 2 weeks to stew and mull this over in my mind. And as the days grew shorter toward the trip, I got more anxiety. I tried to get my mom I tried to tell her I was sick the day of the field trip. She didn't buy it, and she made me go to school. And so when the teacher announced time to go, I went to the end of the line figuring, well, maybe they'll just go and they won't see me, and I'll catch up to them when they don't see me. And so I went to the end of the line. As I did that, one of my little classmates, name of Ernie Pound, came up to me and he said, I brought my little red flyer wagon with me to school. I want you to jump in and I'm going to pull you. You know, years later when I look back at that, you got a 6 or 7 year old boy. There's a lot of empathy that he showed there. And you don't realize that at the time, but I jumped in, readily jumped in. And he pulled me along with it. Now everybody else wanted to take their chance of pulling Dave in the wagon, and it became a positive experience instead of a negative. And if you flash forward when I wrote, I didn't actually write the book, but when Roger Newman, who was a sports writer with the Gazette, wrote the book, I related that story to him. Yeah. So it was in the book. So Doug Cornfield, my partner, the very first book signing I ever did in Corning, unknown to me, found Ernie Pound.
Incredible.
And got Ernie Pound to come to the book signing, unknown to me. And so there was quite a line of people at this book signing, and so I was, you know, who do I sign this to? And people were putting the books under my nose, and I was signing, and I said, who do I sign this to one gentleman? And he said, you can sign that to Ernie Pound. And even now,
Incredible.
It's touching, and at that moment, it really brought out a lot of emotions.
I think so, because I mean, oftentimes people don't realize, especially when they're kids, just the little things that you do to help out one another that aren't maybe the highlight of your life, you know, for the person that does it, but helping out those little things, and you know, for people like Dave, it lasted with him forever. I mean, what would you tell kids in school right now that, you know, may have a friend in class that may need a little extra hand? What would you tell them? The smallest thing they might not even know could help their friend, and that memory lasts forever.
Jen, exactly what you just told me, what you just said. And I've carried this with me for the rest of my life. I'll carry it with me. Your actions that you do every day, you have no idea how they're going to impact someone else. So to do so, if everybody on this earth said, I'm going to do one kind thing a day for my fellow man, this earth would be a whole lot better place. Because if you do a kind act for someone every day, and then that person picks up and does a kind act, it's kind of like the ALS challenge.
Yeah.
You know, it's gonna take off. And instead of a lot of the negativity we see going on today, it's going to turn around. And so my point is, Do something nice for somebody, because even if you forget it, they may not.
Coming up after the break, we find out how Dave overcame his struggles to play ball.
In your book, you mentioned a lot of the different struggles that you went through. And there was an instance, your dad and you used to play ball right here on these streets in Corning, and he was playing with you, and one of the balls landed on your head. And to me, I was like, okay. And then but you said it was a changing point in the way you started playing ball and the way you started, I guess, working your athletic abilities up. What happened at that instance when that ball hit you on the head?
Well, first of all, my dad worked at Ingersoll Rand up in Painted Post for 23 years in the factory. And we didn't have a lot growing up. He worked 3 jobs. And I can appreciate that a lot more now from where I'm at than I did then. But he would come home, I would meet him on the corner of Bridge and William Street in Corning at 3 o'clock every day with 2 gloves and a baseball. We would walk the 2 blocks back to our house. Didn't matter what he had to do, he took time for 30 to 45 minutes a catch every day. And when he did that, one day, and we had a little stone driveway, crushed stone, and he was throwing pop-ups to me. I was 8 years old, and I misjudged one, and it came down and it caught me right in the center of the forehead, knocked me down on my butt. I'm like a snow angel in the stones. And I cut my elbows up a little bit, and he comes down, I'm whimpering, and he comes down, and he says, and I think he's gonna say, okay, that's enough for today, well, let's take the break. But he came down, and he picked me up. He said, oh, you got a little cut there. He said, you're all right. He said, now let's try that again. And that always, that little thing stuck with me the rest of my life. If you get knocked down, you get up and you do it again.
Definitely, and I think that's too, even the kids today, he said, you're fine, like, get back up there and get up.
Right.
What do you tell, to parents now with kids who, or struggle with little things every day? What would you tell them?
I would tell them, there's common sense. Now, and I'm a parent myself today, so you don't want your child to go into a situation where they're going to get seriously hurt. So you protect to that extent. But you don't overprotect. You don't let your child not experience something because you're afraid he might get a little hurt or disappointed. Because sometimes today we tend to say, we tend to protect just from the standpoint of winning and losing.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody gets a medal. There's no score kept. But that's not the way life is.
I agree.
I mean, you're going to have some wins and you're going to have some losses in your life. And we need to teach that at an early age so that the kids can deal with that as they grow older.
I think so, and I think you learned a lot of those core values when your sandlot games. I know you had a debate kind of within yourself in the book about how kids now don't have those sandlot games, so just going out there with your friends and teaching on your own, that's the kind of stuff that you said is important, maybe not so. The Little League, yeah, you got your coach, but when you're out there coaching yourself, you said that changed you as a person.
I learned more playing sandlot than I ever learned in Little League. Kids today don't even know what sandlot is. They don't know how to organize their own games. And that's because we've organized everything for them. My parents, they didn't organize stuff for us. You come on out and play, get out of our hair. And we did. We went to the local fields and we chose up teams and we did the hand over the bat thing to see who was going to bat first. And if we had disagreements, we slugged it out if we had to, and then sometimes they got heated and everybody would be fighting and stuff. But we learned from that, and nobody got hurt. You might have caught a fist in the head or something, but nobody really got hurt. And that taught me a lot of valuable lessons. Plus, without a coach there, you had to figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
You had to figure out what worked. I mean, we had 3 guys on a team generally when we played Sandlot. So we made our own rules. We said 1 inning, you got to hit it to left field. You hit it to right field, you're out. So everybody had to learn how to hit the ball to left field. Because if you didn't, you're out. The next inning, we'd do the opposite. So you had to learn to go the other way. And these are the things that we taught ourselves to do. And today it's so organized that the kids miss out on that.
Definitely. And I think, you know, some of that organization, though, eventually got you to the pros. And what was your experience getting into the pros? And you had to work really hard to do that, to get there physically, mentally, and you did. How did that feel when you stepped in? I think it was, what is it, Art Gaines camp? Yes. So when you tried out for that camp, how did you feel?
Well, the first day, I can tell you now, and it's a memory that'll last forever. The first day, and back then the pitchers had to hit. There was no designated hitters. That's how far back that was, and it was in '71. And the DH came in '73, the designated hitters. So they had us they had the pitchers practicing bunting. And the first pitch I ever saw, I bunted into my own eye.
Oh no!
and my eye just swelled up, and it was kind of closed. And I'm thinking, okay, that's it. I'm done now. They're gonna, you know, that's my first and only attempt, and they're gonna cut me right here. But they didn't. And you know, as you mentioned, it is hard work. It's not just dreaming it and wishing and hoping it. You know, and the other thing is, I knew with my situation that I wasn't going to get a lot of opportunity, and that if I did get an opportunity, I better be ready. So I was willing to prepare for that opportunity without any guarantees that it would ever come. And if I could emphasize that point to anyone, is that if you have a dream, you better be willing to work toward the dream without ever having a guarantee of an opportunity. Because if you don't, and the opportunity does come, and you're not ready, it might be the only one you ever get.
No, I agree with you. And, you know, and that, I believe, kind of happened to you as well, I know. And you had, at one point, a very close chance, I think, to be with the Chicago White Sox. And, you know, that game came, and it kind of flopped. How did that feel? I mean, that for me, like, I felt so bad for you when I started reading this, that you were this close to being in the big leagues.
You're going to have to stay tuned to find out how Dave almost made it to the MLBs.
Point a very close chance, I think, to be with the Chicago White Sox. And, you know, that game came and it kind of flopped. How did that feel? I mean, that for me, like, I felt so bad for you when I started reading this, that you were this close to being in the big leagues.
It's my own fault. No one to blame but myself for that. I had a very good year in 1975. And Bill Veeck, who was the owner of the White Sox, had seen me play in '75. And he called me at Corning Community College. I was coaching up there, and we had fall ball. And it was a Friday afternoon, and Mr. Veeck called, and it was late. It was like 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and it was Friday, so I'm getting out of there. I'm leaving early, it's Friday. Phone rings as I'm going out the door, and I'm debating, should I get that phone or not? I better get it. I pick it up, and the voice on the other end says, "This is Bill Veeck, I'm looking for Dave Clark." And I thought it was one of my players pranking me. So I go, "He's not in, Mr. Veeck, this is Babe Ruth." And there's dead silence. "No, I want Dave Clark." I just told you, Mr. Veeck, this is Babe Ruth. Dave is not here. And then I shake a little bit because I'm thinking, oh man, is this really him? So I go, "Just a minute, I'll get him, Mr. Veeck." hello? And he says, Mr. Veck from the White Sox, I saw you pitch this year. Can you get major league hitters out? And I didn't hesitate. I said, absolutely. He says, well, this is what I want to do. He says, if you can duplicate the season you just had next year, on September 1st, when the rosters expand, I'm going to call you up to the White Sox. And I thought, pretty heady stuff. I said, okay, Mr. Veck. I said, you got a deal. He says, I'm going to be following you next year. And he says, you're going to get a call from me on September 1st, one way or the other. Okay. So I went out in '76, and I had my absolute worst season of my entire career. And I blame a lot of that on myself, because for another lesson I learned is that you think you're doing the same workout and routine, but you don't do it with the same intensity. Yeah. And I had had a good season in '75, and I let down a little bit in my workouts, just a tiny bit. And for me, that tiny bit was crucial, because I didn't have a lot of talent. So I had to work hard at everything I had. And I didn't do it in that off season, and it showed the next year. And Mr. Veck, true to his word, called me up September 1st, called me on the phone. He didn't call me up to the bigs, and he said, Dave Clark. This time I didn't play around. I knew it was him. I said, yes, sir. And he said, you didn't live up to your end of the bargain. I said, you're absolutely right, I didn't. And he said, I'm sorry to say we're not bringing you up. He said, we will follow you in the future. I never heard from him again. So that was one chance where I didn't do what I was supposed to do.
Definitely. But most of the time, though, this man fought so hard, tooth and nail. I mean, throughout his whole entire life. You ended up going to Sweden to play. You ended up then managing in Sweden. That's where you met your wife. And came back here and lived. I mean, it's just incredible the amount of love that you have for baseball. And now that you're back and you're older, you set up the Dave Clark Foundation. Tell me about this foundation, how it got started, because that actually wasn't in the book very much. Must be something that you started recently.
It really was. It was after the book actually was published. Doug Cornfield and I go back quite a ways, and he has a son that was born with no arms. And so he approached me when I was actually coaching with the Elmira Pioneers when they were still professional baseball. He came down and he asked if I could meet him for breakfast. He wanted to talk to me about something some morning. I said, sure. So we got together, and he said, I want to know what your parents did for you. I'm a parent of a boy with severe disability, and I want to know what your parents did for you. Mm-hmm. So we had a long conversation, and he was aware of my story, my background, and he said, you need to get your story out. He said, you don't know how much good it could do for a lot of people. And I said, just played a little ball. I said, it's not that big a deal. He said, well, I think it's bigger than you see. And even though I had done disability baseball camps before, they were more or less hit or miss. We didn't have a real plan or anything. And so he convinced me to start a foundation where we not only be able to do what you saw here today with disability baseball camps, but hopefully to, in the future, get the foundation financially healthy enough to purchase mobility devices for people suffering from post-polio, which is what I have now. People don't realize that people that had polio can still be productive if they have a way of getting around, and they need this kind of device to do that. So we're trying to get it to the point where we can do that as well as continue to work with the baseball camps.
It's a wonderful thing. I mean, these kids play in big league baseball fields. You see the smiles on their faces. It's an absolutely it's kind of a magical thing that happens out on that field for one day for them. I guess one last word of advice for kids out there who are struggling to dream big. What would you tell them?
I would tell them to get a passion for whatever it is that you aspire for. Passion will will allow you to work hard, and just get something, latch onto it, and go for it. And you got to believe in yourself, because you can't bank on someone else believing in you. Believe in yourself.
Definitely. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Dave. Thank you so much. Give me a hug.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
If you haven't read his book, you need to read it. It's great, and you're a great man, and you guys have all these gems here in Corning and in the Southern Tier, and this is just another one. Stay tuned next week for another great episode.